Welcome to Blockstars, Ripple's podcast that features leaders and developers in crypto and blockchain to discuss the latest trends, technologies, and real-world problems being solved. I'm your host, Ripple CTO, David Schwartz. In this exciting episode, we stand at the threshold of a new year. It's crucial to think about how far we've come and what lies ahead. We're joined by Bradley Sheehan from Messari, who apparently everybody calls Red, as we consider the potential trends that will shape the blockchain landscape in the year to come. Welcome to Blockstars, Red. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, David. Super excited to dig into this fun stuff for 2024.
So who are you? What's Messari?
Messari is a market intelligence company. So it's kind of like your Bloomberg, Morningstar for Web3. And, we try to take crypto. Yes, it's all public, it's all on chain, but we try to make it a little more digestible and a little more transparent to understand what's going on there. So I'm a research analyst over there, cover base layers like XRP Ledger and a few others. And other than that, I do some smart contract development. I like to host events, just general education around crypto. Yeah, not financial advice. My thoughts are mine, not Messari's.
Great. That sounds exciting. So I've made some predictions. At the end of the year, we try to talk about what's coming up for the next year. I've made some predictions, and you're here basically to make sure that I'm not crazy, among other things. So you can either agree with me or disagree with me. I'm not always right. There's been developments in the space in innovation, regulation, and of course, XRP got some much needed clarity. And we're going to reflect on some of those achievements, especially the clarity received from the US on XRP's non-security status for builders in the blockchain space. We had an episode of Blockstars on that, our previous one with Chief Legal Officer Stu Alderodi, and we discussed that ruling and the status of crypto regulation in the United States. So what do you think have been some of the highlights this year? What do you see happen this year that you think is important?
I can't believe I'm saying it, but regulation is a highlight. Wouldn't have predicted I'd say that a year ago, but I mean, it seems like it's not by their own volition, but the SEC is reluctantly giving some clarity, so that's nice. Might get ETFs, spot ETFs, that is, and people like SBF are in jail. So regulation's good. The number one highlight, I'd say, would be ordinals and Bitcoin programmability. So that's kind of on the other side of this. That's more of an on-chain thing, but it's been a wave of excitement in that area.
You want to tell people just briefly what ordinals are for people who may not know what you're talking about?
Yeah. So if you're familiar with Bitcoin and a few other networks, you probably think Bitcoin, great, store value. You can't really do much else with it. It has a scripting language, but it's not fully expressive or Turing complete. A few people figured out, thanks to SegWit and Taproot, some old updates, that have been around for a while now, you can inscribe arbitrary data on chain. So people have been making meme tokens and NFTs, and all the degen stuff that people like to do in other places has been coming to Bitcoin. It's been sparking a bit of a renaissance of programmability there.
And I imagine also some pushback from people who think that Bitcoin is a store of value and a means of transfer of value, and it's digital gold and shouldn't be kind of cluttered up with all this nonsense.
Yes, that is a good point. The other side of the coin is that it's all spam and it's an attack on the network. So there are two trains of thought here.
So is there truth somewhere in between those two, probably?
It always is.
Well, this episode's about the future and some of the exciting developments that lay in store for the year to come. We'll talk about some of my predictions and covering areas where there might be huge potential in the year ahead. And again, you can tell me I'm crazy if you don't agree. So we'll start with AI and blockchain, something I've talked about a surprising amount, and it's something that has captured headlines. And it's one of those new things where people are trying to think about how it will affect everything. Just like when the web first came out, when the internet came out, people were like, well, how is the internet going to affect every aspect of, with the way humans do things? And of course, the aspect that we're most interested in is blockchain technology. So I predicted that the convergence of AI and blockchain technology will transform things like cybersecurity and financial services, but also it will simplify building experiences on the blockchain. It will provide user support, ensure accessibility, make blockchain development easier for everyone. So I guess I'll start with the silly question. Am I crazy?
You're not crazy. I know we're just jamming two buzzwords together, but it's real. A lot of it's already here, and it can make things a lot easier if you just want to democratize access to, getting into development. You don't need to be some superstar dev. You can lean on resources like Copilot and ChatGPT, and it can get you part of the way there.
So what do you think of it? You think we'll see some real movement over the next year? I know that tools like Copilot are already remarkably effective. They're good at software analysis, but of course there's always the concern that there's something that they're missing, like they'll miss security flaws, that they'll be exploited or abused by the people who are producing the AI tools. So what do you think? You think it's going to be you think by the end of next year it'll be a clear positive?
A clear positive?
At least in the blockchain space. Let's not try to talk about the whole world.
Yeah, no, I think it's a clear positive. Some people have the idea that it'll automate everything away, but it's a tool. You know, you can use it, and it's never going to fully replace people. It can just make you more efficient and let you do some things you couldn't do before. So it's really just a tool, which tools are positive.
What about for support? I know that like a lot of blockchain technologies are very difficult for people to use, and it's been a big challenge to make those. We always use the metaphor of like, could your grandma use it, or could it's a little bit stereotyping an old woman, but like somebody who's not familiar with the technology, would they be able? And I know like I've tried to bring people who are not technically savvy into blockchain spaces, and it can be very challenging to understand some of the concepts involved. Do you think AI will help with making it more democratic, the ability for people to access it without having to be? You look at every technology from like, there used to be a time when if you wanted to have a car, you had to be able to change the oil yourself. There used to be a time where if you wanted to have a computer, you had to be able to fix it when it broke. And then the way you get mass adoption is by making a technology just solve people's problems without them having to understand how the technology works. If you have to open it, right, that's a problem.
Yeah, I totally agree with that point. Although I don't think AI is necessarily what's going to fix that. So like you said, with software in general, if I ever have to think about how it works or like what the underlying infrastructure is, it probably sucks. Like if I'm using an app on my phone and I have to stop what I'm doing and thinking about what database they're using or what JavaScript framework this website is built in, like it's not good. You never want that. And you really have to think about everything you're doing with crypto. So we do want to abstract away from that stuff. I don't know if it's clear that AI is the tool to do that. I think there are other ways to improve UX and abstract away, things like intent-based architectures, which is kind of a big topic in other networks and is actually really simple, similar to the Pathfinder feature of XRP Ledger's DEX. But AI, I think, just enables people to build some better tools. So it won't be that AI has made this accessible to more people that couldn't. I think it's that AI will help people build the tools to get others there.
Gotcha. All right, let's talk about real world asset tokenization. I've said that I think it's going to be a driving force in the next year with things like real estate, commodities, treasuries, bonds, other types of securities being leading use cases. My colleague Marcus Inkbanger predicted that tokenized treasuries could reach $5 billion as businesses recognize the value of having digital tokens versus physical assets. And this could unlock liquidity and open up new avenues for investment, asset management, so on. I'm going to ask you about, I guess I'll start by asking you if I'm crazy.
You're not crazy because real world assets are already a trend. Where I think you are crazy is houses and real estate, because there are so many more factors there.
Yeah, the regulatory obstacles obviously are, I think there's going to be some place in the world that's going to let that happen. And then, of course, if that works out well, but yeah, probably not within a year, right? That's probably anything that requires regulatory movement is not going to happen quickly. What about institutional adoption of real world asset tokenization?
Yeah, that I see happening on a quicker scale. There's also the difference of, is it a tangible real world asset like a house or an intangible real world asset like a treasury bond? One is much easier to tokenize than the other, and one already has, like a culture and a market around it of high volume trading where people want to buy and sell these things all the time. So you kind of you don't really have to tell people why they want it. They already want it, and you just get a few more benefits from putting it on chain. So you already see protocols like Maker using it. They do stable coins, and then you have some more like Goldfinch and Centrifuge. I think they've been doing real world assets for a while, but it's already there to a degree. And you mentioned like government bonds. Those are the first kinds of things I'm seeing get a little more adoption.
I think the low-hanging fruit, like the closer you are to finance, the lower hanging the fruit is. And the further away from it you are, the harder it is, right?
Agreed.
All right, let's talk about security, privacy, and identity. So I've predicted that decentralized identity is going to revolutionize privacy and security, particularly in the blockchain space, and help to increase institutional volume on decentralized exchanges. A non-starter for institutional adoption is sanction screening. Like, they have to make sure that they're not giving money to terrorists and receiving money from terrorists. And it's not enough that they don't know who they're dealing with. And I think DIDs will become the gold standard for that kind of sovereign identity verification, sanction screening, and institutions will gravitate towards systems that allow them to comply with the regulations that they have no choice but to comply with. We've been working on adding DID capabilities, decentralized identity for the XRP ledger. We proposed an amendment, XLS 40. So I guess I'll start again with asking if you think I'm crazy.
There are a couple of dimensions. I think on one dimension, I think you're crazy. The other, it makes sense. The part I think you're crazy is that this will be the replacement for institutions. I think they're still going to run KYC. I don't see what would be the driving force to move them off of KYC. And I'm not sure if the customers for these kinds of services are people that are like make or break it. I'm doing a DID, or, I'm not doing it. Like, I won't bend to KYC at all. I don't know if those are exactly the customers for these, at least at first. What do you think on that?
I think you're right that some institutions will insist on doing their own KYC of every single customer. I'm hopeful that other types of institutions might be acceptable with having a KYC done by some other entity that they trust, where they have cryptographic proof. I think as long as they have something that they can give to a regulator, so if the regulator says, who's that customer? But it is a concern that essentially, if you outsource that to somebody else, you are taking the risk that they'll be determined they'll have a compromise or something. It's going to be interesting. I think probably the more regulated an institution is, the less likely it is that they're going to be willing to do things, and that may be one of the reasons that banks haven't moved into the crypto space, even though it's a proven revenue model that you can make money. Exchanges have proven that you can make money by providing crypto services. You might look at some banks that have existed, for long periods of time, household names that don't have the value of a company like Coinbase. Like, wow, why aren't we doing this? And I think the answer is that they have too much to lose, and the regulatory environment is not clear. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that'll have to play out. DIDs do open the door for a lot of other on-chain activities that are more traditional crypto, I guess, because, the double-edged sword of a pseudonymous blockchain is that you can just get Sybil attacked and, wreck whatever you're trying to set up here. And that happens with governance things, that happens with on-chain funding. A lot of your more traditional like crypto ethos projects that are maybe more DAO styled, you can totally get Sybil on those. But with a DID, you open the door to avoid wealth centralization issues where, okay, we're not doing linear voting. Let's do quadratic, like Gitcoin style. And they have to figure out identity somehow. I mean, they're doing it with your GitHub and your Twitter. So they're kind of relying on some of the old systems too, but there are other ways to do DIDs. And yeah, they really open the door with what you can do for some of that on-chain governance.
But if you think about what those models do for them, what they do is they say, well, we don't know who you are, but we know who does know who you are. And so if there's some sort of a regulatory issue, we could say, well, you can go to GitHub and you can find out who owns this account. And GitHub might have, there might be anonymous, untraceable accounts on GitHub, but the idea is that if you're a DID provider that people are willing to use, you at least can tell the government, hey, if you have a regulatory problem with this issue, there's this company that will respond to a subpoena that knows who they are. Which is probably the same reason that some people don't like them, right? Like, some people don't like that capability. But the advantage is that you don't have to KYC with every single entity that you're doing business with, although you don't get all the benefits of that. And your identity is only known to the identity provider and whatever their terms of disclosure are.
Yeah, that's a good distinction. There's a difference between DIDs for the sake of governance and sibling versus DIDs for the sake of regulatory compliance. Yeah.
It's interesting, though. I hadn't really thought as much. I've been focused mostly on the regulatory compliance side because of what I do, what my day job is. It's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it as much as for the Sybil avoidance and for the voting and governance aspect. It sounds like an easier adoption there because the alternatives are so much worse.
Yeah, it's just so tough to do that on chain because any network you look at, there's generally a wealth centralization of, who got involved sooner. That's true from the oldest ones of Bitcoin to more recent ones today. And then, you have people voting and it's, 80% of wallets voted for this, but 80% of the stake power voted for something else. That's a bummer.
Yep.
So, people do want to explore other ways to handle funding and such.
Yeah, it gets down to who the stakeholders are. The stakeholders, the token holders, or the stakeholders, the people who find utility, or the.
Yeah.
So let's talk about interoperability and smart contracts. So I've said that by 2024, the advancement of blockchain interoperability will mark an important shift, breaking down silos between different blockchains. I think we'll start to see diverse blockchain platforms sharing data, supporting value transfer, and creating a more unified ecosystem. We want to be able to attract users into the ecosystem who have the ability to use the tools and services we provide, even if we can't, provide them 100% of the capability. You make a website on the internet, it doesn't take over the internet, right? It provides some interesting capability that people find useful, and your target market is the people who find the internet as a whole useful. You don't have to sell people on having a smartphone. You don't have to sell people on getting internet access. They already have that because the ecosystem is so valuable to them. But that only works because the ecosystem is interoperable. We've proposed a cross-chain bridge support for the XRP ledger, which will head to the voting process probably next year. I guess what I wanted to ask you is, how do you foresee blockchains evolving as platforms interact and share data and support value transfer?
The future is definitely multi-chain. I mean, everyone's not going to be living on one chain or even in one ecosystem. So that interoperability is very important. What we talked about a little bit earlier with the UX, I think, comes into play here, because if you're using an overlay network, you don't always know what blockchain you're on. You might be using some dApp that completely abstracts it away, and maybe it's an intent-based system where it's a little bit more imperative and not declarative, like transactions, and you don't exactly know where things are being routed through. You just know it works, and that's kind of the end state we want to get to. So optimistically, I think in 2024, we make a lot of progress in terms of getting rid of some of those barriers, not having to use centralized bridges always. Even to get one chain from another, but to get from one chain's ecosystem to another. So having bridging standards too, that blows open the door of, okay, let's get other VMs in here. Let's make it a little bit easier where we can have, a side chain or a roll up or whatever it be that we want to use Solana's VM right now, or we want to go use the EVM, or we want to use something custom. But once you do that, boom, I can import projects, a lot of open source code from other places. A lot of the, infrastructure is already there. You just need to move it over. So I think having clean bridging standards where everything is not in a centralized custodian, which is really a honeypot for hacks, makes it a lot smoother and a lot less dangerous.
What do you think about blockchain specializing? If you can easily move value and you can easily interact, you don't have to think about what blockchain that you're interacting with. Specialization seems to make sense to me, both because you can talk about things like the fee structure and what VMs it supports and how much storage you get can be optimized for particular use cases. It's not possible to optimize something, that's going to be good for everyone. And you don't have the problem of, people's preferred value is trapped on some other chain. Like people want to use Bitcoin as their token, or they want to use XRP as their token. Right now, they're having more flexibility so that the chains aren't tied to the tokens. And then horizontal scalability, if you can have more chains and each chain has its own transaction throughput. Do you think that's a direction that things are going to move towards, that sort of additional specialization? Do you think that will enable new applications or solutions?
Yeah, I think so. It feels like an evolution of the whole app chain thesis that Cosmos really popularized. And then that moved to, other networks. Ethereum World has a bit of that with their layer twos. And I see the argument, oh no, you're going to fragment liquidity. If you can handle the bridging parts properly, you don't have these liquidity issues. If you can, have clean bridging where you don't have custodians in between, then you don't run into those fragmentation issues as well. But like you said, you can set up your own fee structure. You can really do whatever you want. You can have a general chain that's pretty good at everything, but it'll never be great at one thing. That's the whole point of specializing. Then you can really excel in that one area and you don't have to worry about anything else. So I think that idea is just going to become more popular. I'm sorry to my Solana fans that, love the monolithic chain and don't want side chains or roll-ups or anything, but I see it going that way.
So what about the tribalism in the cryptocurrency space? Do you think, if we have chains that are more specialized and aren't trying to be everything to everyone, do you think maybe we'll see a space that's more open and welcoming because people don't see every chain as competing with every other chain, but instead they see the attractiveness of an ecosystem that does have something for everyone?
It's a weird one because like it's there on Twitter. We know that. But when I go to a meetup in real life, it's not really there.
You think social media brings out the worst in people to some extent because they
Well,
want
they're the
to get
loudest
engaged.
voices.
Yeah. Maybe it's a loud minority. Maybe. I hope you're right. That's a very optimistic view.
Yeah, I try to have the optimistic view on it. I mean, anyone who's in the crypto space, whether you are a maxi on chain X or Y, you have more in common with the other people in the crypto space than everyone who wants our old system to reign forever.
Well, maybe with the regulatory clarity, we'll lose some of our common enemies. Let's talk about stablecoins. So I think the year ahead could be a big one with regard to stablecoins. Stablecoins could reshape global finance, create foreign exchange corridors, reduce dependence on the US dollar. And I think that reduction of traditional currency dependencies and a more diversified and resilient financial ecosystem really could be enabled by a healthy and robust stablecoin ecosystem. So I guess I'll start again with am I crazy?
Not crazy on this one. Stablecoins are like the first killer app.
Yeah. So where do you think either regionally or technologically or use case, where's the product market fit the best?
There are a couple of differences with usage of various stablecoins. So one thing even is USDC and USDT, two of the big ones. And there's a pretty big difference that Coinmetrics put out a blog on this, so I'm referencing them. They looked at the time of day that everyone's sending USDC versus the time of day everyone's sending USDT. And it's clear that the Americas like USDC and everyone else likes USDT. And part of that is probably
not surprising.
Yeah, where they're based out of these companies. But if you're in a place and you have a ton of inflation with your local currency, the US dollar sounds pretty great. And a lot of those places, the governments, the banking systems there, they don't really make it that easy to get out of your hyperinflated local currency and into US dollars. That's not really going to help the cause for that currency, but it will help you, hold on to your money. So that is where a lot of activity, anecdotally, I see happens with stables. And, that's why stables are so popular in, maybe developing regions.
What about the regulatory environment for stablecoins?
Regulatory environment. One thing I'll say is I really hope it clears up because the US dollar is the big stablecoin, right? You don't see everyone using euros or yuan or all this other stuff. And if I was someone working in the US government, you'd think like, oh, that's awesome. We just got so lucky that everyone in this new industry decided that the US dollar is the reserve currency and not anyone else's. Like, that's sweet. Let's make sure this is easy to work with. Let's keep it at home. Let's not blow up Silvergate. But maybe not everyone sees it that way.
If you tie it to the U.S. banking system, then they're real dollars. And if you force these companies out of the U.S., they're just going to be a derivative that's pegged to the dollar. And it's not hard to see which is better for the U.S. It's kind of some regulatory short-sightedness that, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think so. Because that's awesome. If you are the U.S. and you say, oh, everyone wants to use this, my dollar, awesome. You should be welcoming that.
Like the way the United States got into the plumbing of the internet at a very early time, and now other countries are not very happy with the sort of de facto control we have because we wormed our way into its infrastructure so early. We could have done that with stablecoins and crypto, and we just let that opportunity go away.
Yeah, it was huge with the internet. Now British developers have to spell colors LOR. they can't put the U in it. It's first dibs.
I don't know if that's the best example of a regulatory win that I would have picked, but it certainly is.
It's the culture win behind it.
Yeah. So let's keep the fun going and let's answer some listener questions. We now let our listeners join the conversation by tweeting to us at RippleXDev, and we'll try to answer them on the podcast. So let's see what the community has. We have, what are your thoughts about the impact of meme coins from Winston Buki? Red, I'll let you take that one.
Meme coins. Oh, man. Meme coins are for the culture. They mean nothing, and that won't stop them from pumping. It is. The more I learn about crypto, the less I understand about that part. The more I learn about the tech, the less I understand meme coin markets.
I've been trying to figure out, is it good because at least it brings attention to the space, or is it bad because it tends to bring negative attention? Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that.
I'll say net good.
Yeah, I can tell some stories about the very early days of meme coins when there was like Panda Coin and the Panda Coin that were different coins, and there was Duck Coin, and so someone created Duck Coin, and super early stuff. I wonder if any of those still exist, and maybe I still have some. So Cryptart2 asked, do you see the next wave of adoption being more sustainable this time around? I don't know if they mean sustainable in the sense of like ecologically sustainable or sustainable of like, can we keep the adoption going? It is interesting that it does seem like progress in the space tends to come in waves. What do you think?
I see what you mean with progress coming in waves. It probably relates to prices and, when there's a bull market and this and that, you get X amount of people that come in every time. And I don't think we'll ever keep all of them, like us as an industry, people that get introduced, but you'll keep some. And those people are going to build. I mean, and by build, I don't mean writing code. I mean, contributing in any way, like just being there, just working technical, non-technical roles, like contributing to projects. Just, you retain a certain amount of people every time. So it seems like the amount you get at first gets bigger every time, and then maybe you keep the same percent and you lose everyone else until the next cycle.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about some of the newer technologies, things like the advancement in zero knowledge proofs and some of the work in interoperability. I think makes the space a better space to be in, and enables us to address more real world problems. It's going to be interesting to see. So guys, keep the questions coming. Who knows, your question might be featured in our next episode. So what I always do at the end of Blockstars is we have this tradition of asking the guests to bring out their crystal ball, although we've pretty much been talking about the future this whole episode. So it won't be that much. I guess I'll just ask you, where do you think where are we in this journey, and what are you excited about and what's coming ahead?
Where are we in this journey? I have not been in this space quite as long as you, David, or many others. I've been paying attention, for a few years, maybe 3 years now, where I've really been into this. So I don't think I've really been through a full cycle on that sense. Like I don't think I was there for the beginning of the last bull. So I maybe have a limited perspective. But from that limited perspective, it's way past the question of will crypto survive? Is it coming back? It feels inevitable at this point. It's a matter of time. It's been legitimized. On a regulation level, on a tech level. And I think it's inevitable at this point. So I think that's where we are. It's kind of, I'd like more bear market, a little bit more time to learn and build and get stuff out. Things get noisy when things turn around there. And what was your second question there?
Yeah, bear markets are also a great time to hire and build a team and so on. So my second question is there, the second part of the question is what you're excited about what lays ahead that we haven't talked about?
What I'm excited about. I'm excited about Bitcoin programmability. That one really fires me up. It's so fun. The laser eyes will hate me for calling it a good thing, but I love it. It's so fun. And then I love the modularity. Modularity as in let's get rollups and side chains and modular data availability layers and all that good stuff in. That's really letting a lot of chains specialize. It seems like we almost have enough users to have a reason to diversify that much. Sometimes it feels like we have all this tech and no users for it, but hopefully we're there.
Yeah, I love the idea of an ecosystem that where sort of like where the target market is people who find the whole blockchain ecosystem interesting, people who are familiar with tools that allow them to interact with a wide variety of products and services that provide for the specific things that they need, rather than trying to build like a one solution that's supposed to be for everyone. Well, thanks, Red. Thanks for joining me. It was a pleasure hosting you on Blockstars, Ripple's podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on. It was a blast.
Any social handles you want to promote or something while you got a chance?
Yeah. Find us on Twitter, Messari Crypto and Red Velvet Zip.
Awesome. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me on Twitter at Joel Katz, JoelKatz. And remember to follow at RippleXDev on Twitter to keep up with the latest industry news, technical updates, and cool new developer projects in the community. See you around the blockchain.